When people feel heard, feel understood, when they feel like you know exactly where they're at and are kind of walking alongside of them, there is such an intimacy that is built.
Instant relatability that you often find when you're younger,
Yes.
just seems to kind of dwindle and wane.
Dwayne,
as some might say.
You have to be very intentional
Sure.
about friendship in your 30s, or it could just not be.
I mean, I used to go to places by myself,
Yeah.
like all the time
Yep.
in my teens
Yep.
and even early 20s. Like show up, the hostess is like, how many? I'm like, you're looking at them.
Yeah, I'd be at Olive Garden with a book.
Yeah.
Time for love again. My time for love is here.
Welcome back to Quality Time with Gabe and Grace.
I'm Gabe.
And I'm Grace, and this is episode 8.
Ocho.
Ocho.
Yeah.
Bilingual
En español.
episode. Well,
Yeah.
we're excited to be back for another week together.
Mhm.
Before we jump into this week's topic, let's kick off with a little quality over quantity.
Always.
If you're new to the show here, Quality Over Quantity is a segment we start our episodes with where we chat about one thing, experience happening in our lives that we're enjoying, something that has been quality. So we just name one thing versus many things, and that makes quality over quantity. So do you want to kick us off this week?
I do. So mine's a pretty big one this week. It's
Okay.
high quality. So I recently purchased a new MacBook Pro
Nice.
because, your boy was on the struggle bus with the edits of this stated show here.
Slow.
Yeah. Just like every little click, every little cut would be the rainbow spinning ball of death where,
yeah.
it would just take like 3 seconds, 4 seconds. And then that, multiplied out across hundreds of cuts and clicks
Oh
and
my
steps
gosh.
would just make the editing process a nightmare.
Let's just give it up for our editor right now. Come on. We couldn't be here without you. Seriously.
Very silly that I'm still doing this and I haven't delegated it, but hey, I don't learn my lesson. So anyways, now I will say that it's not just for this show. I didn't just like go buy a laptop to work on a podcast. Obviously I own a company and
Yep.
do a lot of designing and other work in different Adobe Creative Suite type,
Yes.
programs, all of which are kind of RAM intensive. So I was slow on all the things anyways. And so it just made sense to upgrade. So got a nice new 14-inch space black M4 Max Pro, all the things, just like latest
It's
chip.
made all the difference.
Yes. All the RAM. It's just like instantaneous. Like I think a thing and then it happens on the screen.
Very
It's
good.
extremely fast. So that is my quality over quantity. Shout out to your boy Steve Jobs. Shout out to Apple's innovation over the years, even though it's slowed down and we could use some more. But it's made a huge difference and it's just like nice to look at. Obviously, they make beautiful products. So
Yeah.
I'm extremely pleased.
I love that. So all of us analog people are like, what's RAM?
It's a woodland creature that you find on various mountaintops.
It's like, I kind of know what it is, but yeah, that's okay. So my quality over quantity is in a different direction than yours this week. Technology. Mine is often some sort of food that I'm enjoying.
Of course.
So this week I needed to highlight a favorite. And if you're in Tampa, Florida, if you're local, I'm just going to shout this place out, and that's Supernatural Food and Wine.
So good.
They're located downtown, and we used to have an office downtown, so we were there all the time, and we would order that for lunch often. But we haven't been downtown, we haven't been working downtown for quite a while, a couple years. And so now I never really eat at that spot. And so you were down there yesterday, and you were like, hey, I'm going to lunch at Supernatural. And like, before I could even say like, ooh, you get me something? You were like, what can I get you?
I knew.
So I got my favorite salad from Supernatural, and that is the Thai Crunch salad. And I've pulled it up to let you know exactly what's in it. The Thai Crunch salad has cabbage, carrot slaw, which is so good, charred cabbage, cilantro, orange slices, avocado, cucumber, red onion, candied peanuts, and sesame seeds with citrus vinaigrette.
Wow, the hits just keep on hitting.
It is so good, and that citrus vinaigrette is so light and refreshing. And so I get mine with tofu. You can get it with chicken. But if you do like tofu, it's like a very flavorful, marinated tofu. It's not like bland or anything like that. It's just so...
And for those of you that watched episode 7 and watched my first run-in with tofu, if you are on team no tofu...
Yeah, we're on different pages with that one.
You know what to do. Slip it in the pocket.
The thing with tofu is you've got to know how to prep it. If you just slice up a cube of tofu, it's
simply,
just like meh.
You just don't. You do not prep it. Yeah, that's the best way to prep
We'll agree
tofu.
to disagree.
Yeah.
But anyways, if you're local, go to Supernatural. Get yourself some good lunch. They have amazing breakfast sandwiches.
Yep.
They just do a great job all around. It's a little hole in the wall, so you just like order and take it with you.
Yeah, you could eat outside. There's some kind of urban city vibes. Sitting,
like right on the street,
sidewalk.
like on the sidewalk.
It's kind of cool.
Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, we're like talking at the same time. So excited about it.
So excited. So cool. Quality.
So that's quality over quantity for this week, and hope that inspires you to upgrade your life when need be.
Yeah.
And also, make sure you're eating something delicious and make vegetables delicious.
Make vegetables great again.
Yeah. That's kind of what I was going to say. And then I thought, well, what I really mean is make them delicious, marinate them, mix them up with the right combinations, dress them.
Yeah, give me more.
Get them to the right texture.
What else?
All the things. So anyways, I'm passionate about that salad.
I can tell. Yeah.
Let's move on. So this week's episode, we are going to be talking about the topic of friendship. And whenever we're thinking about like, what do we want to cover within the episode, we're thinking what hits for people, what's relatable?
Yeah.
What can people really resonate with? And I think the topic of friendship in your 30s is something that we've talked about throughout the years because friendship really changes throughout your life. And so I think this topic will be something that people can relate to, yes, but also something that maybe encourages people if they are in a rut with friendships.
Sure.
Or just feeling like a little lost in the area of friendship. Or maybe it'll just be like, oh yeah, I feel that. And wow, I'm blessed in the area of friendship. So I think wherever you're at, hopefully this episode hits for you. So we're going to just break down the topic of friendship, but really talk about how it changes in your 30s and how do you navigate that. I think we both have personal stories and things that'll be just fun to hash out together. So you ready?
Yep, let's do it.
All right. So we've got a few questions we're going to cover, just 4 questions. So the first one is, how are friendships in your 30s different than, say, your 20s, your youth, your childhood? Do you want to start?
Yeah, definitely. For me, I think it's the fact that instant relatability that you often find when you're younger just seems to kind of dwindle and wane. Dwayne, as some might say.
If you were here for episode 5.
Yeah.
I think it's 5.
Yeah, I just think the less spontaneous you get, the harder it is to be flexible and for example, meet someone anywhere at any time. The more sedentary we get, the more you don't like to drive long distances, which is kind of like a funny ism of getting older, but I get it, where you
convenience.
Yeah, the convenience. Another way to put it is that I think the older we get, the more risk averse we get, essentially.
Yeah.
And so in a sad way, it seems like we are less likely to invest and take a risk on people the older we get, because that risk includes potential rejection. That risk includes investing time and energy and resource and sometimes money, I mean, when you're young, you're like, you look at your bank account and you have $20 to your name and your friend's like, bro, let's go meet up at, Chili's and go buck wild on 2-for-1s, And you're like, say less, like I'm in, you know what I mean? You don't even think about it.
Sure.
And then as an adult, I think you just count every little cost, whether it's actual cost or whether it's just the time when you're looking at your calendar and you're like, man, I've got all this stuff to do with work. And if I take this time to take a break and recharge as much as it would be nice, like I'm going to get behind, and then I don't want that stress. And obviously if you're married or if you have kids, like, I mean, that just takes it to a whole nother level. So I just think, the older we get, the less risky we get. And then in a way, the more sedentary we get. So all of that to say, I just think when you're in your teens and 20s and you serendipitously bump into a stranger, you're more likely to be like, hey, what's up? Tell me everything about you. And I'm invested, Yeah. And when you're older, I feel like you just subconsciously feel like, you know what? I've got my friends. I've got everything I need. I'm busy. I'm on mission. I'm on my way.
Sure.
And so you don't allow yourself to be interrupted as often, which is sad, but I think that's just the reality sometimes of friendships in our 30s.
Yeah. Yeah. You make an interesting point, because I think last week or 2 weeks ago, we were talking about like giving your best yes, like if it's not a heck yes, it's a no kind of thing. And it's almost like that. If you are saying yes, you're saying no to something else, and like you realize that more as you get older. So you have more things that you have to consider, like when someone asks, do you want to set this date and do this thing, or do you want to do something spontaneously? It's a little harder to say yes because you have more things to consider. Whereas in your younger age, it's like, of course, what else would I be doing? But going to Chili's. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I thought about this question, like thinking about each stage. So I said in childhood, I feel like you're always meeting new friends. Like when I was contemplating my childhood and friendships, it's like you just have so many different friends all the time. Like if you think about a elementary school class, it's like those are all your friends in the class. Like when it's your birthday, you bring cupcakes for all your friends in your class. And so it's it's like an abundance of friends when you're really young. And it's characterized by play and togetherness. So if you're in the same room like every day, that's your friend. And then youth, I thought, like as I was getting a bit older, like middle school or early high school, it's more like you're learning to get along, like you're kind of learning to trust people. You're learning how to be kind. You're learning that, well, maybe you're not recognizing this, but you are being more influenced by your friends, maybe in like more significant ways. Like I think about friendships in middle school and how like I did have more like little like drama, within friendships and things like that. So there is this like sort of working out like attitudes and like how people make you feel, and your
sort of hormones are raging too,
so you're struggling through friendship a little bit more. Like I remember having more tiffs, like little
so true,
little fights with friends in that like age bracket. But then when I think about my 20s, I think those are like your deepest bonds, right? So it's such a vulnerable time because you're like growing into adulthood. So you are like latching on to people that are also in that same phase of life with you, and you're kind of doing it together. So I was thinking like you're growing up together, you're having experiences together. A lot of times, like if you're off at college or whatever you're doing after your high school years, like those people you tend to really bond with because they're like your first adult, like chosen friends.
That's a good point.
So that's an interesting stage of life, and I would even say that those friends tend to be like very significant bonds that you might keep for a really long time through your 20s. And then when I think about 30s, I'd say like you said, you're a bit more settled. You're looking for people who will kind of call you up. You're looking for people who you can relate to. You're looking for people to be heard by and also to listen to. Like there's more of like just wanting deeper connection, I think, as you get older. And so that I do think is therein where the like trickiness of 30s settles in. It's no longer like built into your life. You have to be very intentional about friendship in your 30s, or it could just not be.
I mean, if you want a new friend in your 30s, you got to have a whole framework of how to get that friend, whether it's, going to the same church or having, let's say if your kids are old enough, maybe having like sporting, functions to try to meet other parents.
Because you're going to see those people every weekend on the soccer field or whatever.
And that really is the biggest binding piece of friendship in your youth is that you share these regular rhythms. Like I go to school with you, I'm on the same team as you, or, we do this extracurricular thing together. When you become an adult, all of that kind of goes away. You have less structure. And a lot of it, like you said, is more chosen. And so you have to choose that structure as an adult if you don't have it, innately. And so that's I think been the biggest challenge for us as I think back to, this last decade or whatever of our friendship development is how much intention it requires, to go out and build those friendships, to make yourself available, to show up. It's not for the faint of heart. It sounds funny. Like this whole topic sounds almost kind of like a silly American first world privilege problem or whatever, but it's like, it's so true that the busier you get and the more you take on, the less capacity you have for this super fluid, spontaneous, yeah, man, I'll just show up, or you know what, I'll just go to this place. I mean, I used to go to places by myself, like all the time in my teens and even early 20s. Like I would go to dinner by myself. I would eat out places. I had like solo dates, you know what I mean? Like just like show up. The hostess is like, how many? I'm like, you're looking at them.
I'd be at Olive Garden with a book.
And I would meet people, you know, I'd met like friends and stuff. One of my oldest friends, shout out Kumari, I met him at like the Borders bookstore, like around the corner, which doesn't even exist now. It's like a medical clinic because they just like changed it or whatever. But like I just met him at a bookstore. And I've known him now for like what feels like almost 20 years, you know, like, and we're just still tight. And like that's so much more rare than you know, what happens today where you're just kind of, and especially with the advent of phones,
I was going to say that,
you're just chilling in line and you're like just glued in.
Well, and not only are you distracted by your phone in public places, but also there's an illusion of connection and like, I don't want to say an illusion of friendship, but an illusion of connection with social media.
Totally.
Because you are seeing what everybody's up to, like we've talked about, but you're not there with them. Like you're liking it and you're observing it from afar, but you really aren't even grasping the full experience because they're just posting a glimpse in time. So there is a struggle there, I think, that makes friendship as you get older even more difficult to establish, is that there is this almost false sense of like, I'm spending time with people, but I'm not.
Interesting. Yeah. There's like, there's a satisfaction that you get from knowing someone online. I mean, how many times have we been with some friends and they're like, oh, you know, we got to introduce you to our friend so-and-so. And we're like, we know everything about them because we already follow them. You know,
so true.
And so there's this checking of the box of like, I have more friends than I even realize, but it's like, actually they're not friends. They're just sort of people in your life that you're aware of, hyper aware of, but you don't have direct connection with.
There's a difference.
Scary.
There's not an intimacy there, which I think we can talk more about in a minute. So, okay. So we're saying to the question then of what are the challenges that we've experienced in friendship in our 30s? We're kind of hitting this one: schedules and time for deep connection. Like you have just more going on in your life. Your life is fuller as you get older, as you get married, as you have children. All of these things are filling up your life. I also just made the note of like balancing specifically with marriage, and you kind of touched on that. But I think also something about friendships when you're married is oftentimes you want like both the man and the woman to like click with you and your husband. So
totally.
That can be tricky if it's you're just friends with one and then your spouse doesn't connect with the other one. Then it's not like you're all hanging out together. It's like it's got to be times where it works for you to go do a girl's thing or to go do a guy's thing. And so that can be tricky, is like, do both people in the relationship like click with the other?
And because really it comes down to efficiency. You know, when you're married, when you have children, you have less time in the schedule, at least in our context, for each of us individually to go off and be hanging out all the time with our individual friends. You know, that's where the texting and the calling comes in, just to stay connected. But if and when we are going to spend our limited, you know, time to go out somewhere and put the baby in the car seat and all the stuff that, you know, it takes to get ready, you really have to triangulate it on like, okay, this is a connection where you are friends with the wife, I am friends with the husband. We all sort of connect well together. And we're going to, you know, choose. It's almost like, you know, voting with your dollar. It's like we're voting with our time. Like, this is a worthy relationship. We love these people. And this is how we're going to spend our Saturday. One of 4 Saturdays a month, which seem to be sort of like the time that you're scheduling all these things with all these people. And so that's a huge piece of it, is in a marriage context, having that like connect for, you know, chemistry is definitely a blocker to relationships potentially.
And I will say too, you can make it work, because part of me wants to say, you know, okay, so if I go hang out with a gal, but leave you and my son behind, I'm saying no to you guys for those hours to say yes to her. So that's a trade-off, and you really have to weigh that out. But I will say as well, I think we've had a great and positive experience with some of the single people in our lives, because I don't want to make this sound like married people can't be friends with single people. We have friends that are single, and we have a great connection with them. Like, you have a good connection with them, and I have good connection with them, in the sense of like, it's almost like they relate to you as a brother. and me as a sister. And so we have just a few people in our lives that aren't married, and they're awesome. And they'll come over and hang out with both of us. Me and her might do something, but also like it's totally cool if it's all three of us or all four of us now that we have a child. And so that's really sweet. And I just want to make that point is like, I don't think you're excluded from being friends with certain types of people, married people or whatever, if you're not there yet. I think those friendships you can actually glean like so much because you are living life very differently from one another. I think we can glean much from them and they can glean much from us. And so just wanted to mention that. I think it's important.
Especially when those relationships have been longstanding in our lives, right? Like, so maybe, you know, you two were single girlfriends, but then you got married and maybe that person stayed single, or like, you know, one of my buddies, same story or whatever, but we love them all the same. And so I think that's an important, I'm glad you said what you said, that's an important piece for people who are married or just moving on into their next phase of life, that, to recognize that, you know, we're going to have friendships around us that are, you know, potentially going to feel like, oh, I'm left behind, you know, like I'm left in the wake of all of the new things that you're often doing. And I think that there's a beautiful intention to adjust the way you relate to those friends that may be in another stage of life. Because that is one of the saddest pieces of friendship in your 30s, is like, as soon as you enter whatever that next stage is, you know, for us, yes, now we have a child, but like we have friends that have multiple children, and that's a whole different vibe from just having one little baby who kind of stays put to multiples who are running all around. And so there's work to be done upward and backward, right? From both parties to really keep your friends integrated into your life and to adjust where you can. But to also, you know, communicate and ask for grace where it's needed, because sometimes, you know, when the kids are all running around and you're trying to like update each other on your life's deepest new thing, it can be a challenge to like get that focus. And you could take offense to that, or you could be the one who's like feeling guilty. You're like, I'm so sorry, they're running around, they're crazy, you know? And so, there's just a lot of grace that is required to maintain friendships.
That's true. That's such a good point of how complicated it can get as like families grow, and that, yes, like as you grow into that next stage, you will be more gracious towards like, oh, I get it. Like, that's why we're pausing like this conversation right in the middle of the cliffhanger. It's like, hold on, they need a tissue. But I'm getting it now as a parent. I understand more. Okay, so definitely resonate on those challenges. What do you appreciate most in friendships in this season of your life? So thinking about your current friendships, I wanted to say, I think that sharing with each other, like we're kind of just talking about cliffhangers of important stories, but being able to open up with people, I think, is one of the most important things when it comes to friendships. I think in the past, in youth and maybe in early adulthood, it's like having fun together and doing this and that. And of course, I love a good time and having fun. But I think in this season of life for me, it's like, I just want to be known, like, and know. And so being checked in on, like, is probably the biggest thing. Just like checking in on like, hey, how did that thing go? Like, we have some great friends. They know who they are. We actually met them. We've known them, but like we connected with them over the last like 2 years. We both were at a bagel shop one morning and we sat down and we were like, let's all sit together. And we ended up talking for hours at the bagel shop, and we've just, you know, gotten together a few times after that, but mostly like we've stayed very connected just in like a text group. And we just kind of know what's going on in each other's lives. Like this week, they were praying for you as you were going to have your doctor's appointment. You know, we're in the loop on what they've got going on right now. And there's something really wonderful about people just knowing what's going on in your life. So that's something that I thought about. But what's big for you as far as like what you really appreciate in a friendship?
I mean, I just have some deep time-tested friendships with guys that, you know, we've known each other now for over a decade. And what I appreciate the most is just the comfort, the deep knowing, the security in those relationships where, to your point, you know, some of them live 5 minutes away. Some of them are traveling the world and all over the place. But I just love that I can have these friendships that are, you know, again, as a man, like this is important, that they're low maintenance, you know, like do not require much. But when we're connected, I mean, it's like nothing ever happened. And it's, especially when we're in person, it's like, dude, it's like we've been roommates this whole time, you know? So I think that's what I appreciate about being this age and having long friendships is just the comfort level to be in the same room, sometimes not even utter a word. Like the type of relationships where maybe we're in the car running an errand for the wives and we're just like, you know, I'm driving, I'm looking over, we're not saying a word. I'm just like, respect, dude. You know, like don't even need to say it. Like we're just quality time is happening right now.
Yeah,
you know?
just being together.
Yeah, just being together. I just love that effortless type of friendship where the rapport has been building for years and years and years. And so it just gets richer as time goes on. And every time we see each other, it's just like, man, you're a literal brother to me. You know, like this is how close we are.
And those, I just have to note, those are rare, those friendships.
Absolutely.
Those are rare and they are to be treasured because you don't get a billion of those. You don't get 10 of those. You get a few of those.
Yes.
And those are really, really, really sweet parts of life. I would even say that those, for me, are the friendships that have been answered a prayer type friendships. I have some friends where, I have a friend where when I was in college, I had transferred to this university and I didn't know anyone in town but one person who was a friend of yours. So they weren't even a friend of mine, really. I mean, he was great, but I wasn't going to be hanging out with him, really. And so I was just praying in the car one day and just out loud was just like, God, I need you to give me just one good, like soul sister friend. Yeah. And that day I met her at like a pizza party for our college, like just like something the college was putting on. And we connected that day and it was months down the road. We started having all our classes together because we were in the same major and we just ended up being like the closest of friends. We did all of our studying together, did everything together throughout college. And to this day, she is one of my closest, dearest friends.
Now, that's also a super rare friendship because then she went ahead and married a guy that I got along with famously and has become a really good friend of mine. Yeah, what's up, Doc? Where like we just adore both of them at an equal level.
It's
like
easy.
Yeah.
It's
so
wonderful.
that is super rare. And we thank God for that kind of relationship because sometimes it's like you have a really close friend and, you know, just maybe from distance or this or that, I don't get to connect with the other. But I will say, like, as I go through the list and I'm like, oh, you people know who you are. We have a lot of those types of relationships where like you came in and you knew the girl and then they married a guy. And then, you know, maybe it was a slow development because, again, we don't live in the same state. Yeah. But, like, you have a lot of friends where I'm like, God, I really like all these guys. Like, they're really good friends
you'll be, like, texting someone, and I'm like, who are you texting? And it's, like, that girl's husband. And I'm like, dang, you guys text more than we do.
Yeah, exactly.
But, no, I love that. That's such a gift. And I would say the same for you. Like, those people that you were just referencing, those guys you've had in your life for 10 years, those girls are precious to me. And again, it's so easy. And they are some of the most intentional friends that I have. And seriously, when I thought about this episode, like they came to my mind so much because they've been such good friends to me. Yes. And that's just been so wonderful. So I just want to highlight that is special. And if you don't have that in your life, I really challenge you to pray that prayer of like, God, send me just one. Like if you're a married couple, send us one other couple or two couples. Just
one and a half couples.
We don't need a billion of them. There's a few and they are just so wonderful. But pray that prayer because God's faithful to bring us friends and community when we ask for it.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, so final question is, it kind of comes from a quote. If you want a friend, be a friend. This is something that, you know, oftentimes when I've asked God for friends, he's put that on my heart. Like, if you want a friend, be a friend. That's a great way to make friends, is to be good to people. And so how do you exercise or extend intentional friendship? Like, what are things that you do to be a friend? And I've shouted you out in the past. I think you are a great friend. So I'm eager to hear what you have to say.
Well, and I've kind of gone over this in previous episodes where for me, I don't even do this now out of obligation. I really do enjoy doing this, but I kind of just have a system where I make my rounds, you know, like
checking in on people.
Yeah. I mean, you know, by now, like with all the cities I've lived in and all the eras of, you know, whether, you know, living in different parts of town or going to different churches or schools or whatever the case is, you know, I've accumulated a deep group of guys that I've, you know, on the spectrum of like, you know, acquaintance to like deep, you know, brother for life kind of guys. Yeah. And so what I'll do is I'll just occasionally, as the Lord leads too, because sometimes he puts people on your heart, and you're like, oh, I'm thinking about that guy. Let me shoot him a text and see how he's doing. Sure. But yeah, I'll just send out like kind of multiple texts. Sometimes it's maybe the same prompt or the same question, Yeah. Other times, obviously, it's contextual to our relationship.
Yeah.
But I'll just check in and, see how they're doing. And, maybe I have a thing I want to share with them, but I want to first, figure out where they're at, how they're doing, really make sure that they feel seen and, that I'm being intentional before I share the thing that I, want to share with them, or a question I had, or some angle, or whatever the case is. So for me, it's just kind of a simple strategy of, being intentional with reaching out.
Yeah.
And if you're bad at that, maybe setting a monthly reminder of like, hey, I'm going to send all my friends a text on the 5th, or the third Friday of every month, or whatever the case is. And I think that can really spark some great communication and some healthy sort of relational maintenance, right? Like as if it's a 16-point inspection on your car. But that's kind of what I've done over the years to kind of keep things up.
That's good. And I would say something you also do is, like, with that one or two people that you are closest with, you have like a built-in, like every Thursday at 8 a.m. we meet for coffee or whatever. Yeah. You have a built-in kind of system like that. And I think that that's something I always like applaud you on, because I think doing something, again, at this age with all the other things that are happening in life, like having that just like locked in, that commitment to a person really does say a lot, because that builds friendship like no other, in the sense of just the consistency.
Well, and it's recognizing that we need that sort of, iron sharpening. We need accountability. We need, obviously there's a social component that's fun, and it's just, it's great to spend time with people that you care about. But for us, it's also like, hey, let's make sure that we're, being devoted Christians, we're being devoted husbands, we're being devoted fathers. And so a lot of those meetings are, sort of like business meetings in a way, of like, you good? How we doing? Let's do a check-in. Let's, take the inventory. And then, maybe we'll diverge into, the stock market or sports or whatever you guys talk about, But I think that kind of regular cadence is really important. And if you have the time and space to put some of that on your calendar, I think it's a really healthy rhythm to maintain, because at the end of the day, you're getting outside of yourself. And, it's very hard, in my opinion, to be down or depressed or be dealing with anxiety when you are making yourself available to others, and you're thinking about others, and you're constantly praying for others and sharpening others. There's not a lot of room left for worry and for feeling, stress about whatever your situation is.
Yeah. Like you said, it gets you outside of yourself. I heard a definition one time of like depression being like just being completely turned in. Yeah. And so I love that visual of just like turning out, and how that can be so helpful, not to belittle depression, but I think there really is a way to get outside of yourself, and that's one of them. Yeah. When I think about extending friendship, I think about checking in on others, like you said. I think about praying for others, listening, holding space. And what I mean by that is, I think that when people feel heard, feel understood, when they feel like exactly where they're at and are kind of walking alongside of them, there is such an intimacy that is built, especially at this age and stage of life. So I was looking in the Bible too to see like, what does the Bible say about friendship? And I was thinking specifically about Jesus, and he says in John 15, like, I call you friends now, not servants, because I've revealed to you everything the Father's shown me. And it's like in that sharing, there's a friendship. And then I thought about, like, he says Moses talked to God face to face as a friend talks with a friend. Yeah, again, good. There's a sharing, there's a conversation, there's a face to face. And, I just think that there's something really significant about meeting with someone, about talking with someone, about listening with someone, being known, making yourself known, but also receiving who this person is and where they're at. And so I think making time for that, whatever that looks like, that really does build friendship, and that builds a sweet bond. Yeah. There's people that I've gotten together with, like I could count on one hand, but we had deep conversation again, which brings us to the whole, starting point of this podcast, right? Is like, we love deep conversation.
Yeah.
But when you have a deep conversation with someone and you really get to know who they actually are, you don't need, it's quality over quantity. You don't need 2,500 coffee dates.
Yeah.
You can have a few, and that builds this like rich foundation, and you find ways to stay connected from there. That's been my experience. And so I think for me, the reminder is to just ask people important questions, ask things that matter. Yeah. Again, it's all about like the things that we said in episode 1 of the podcast. It's like, be real. Like, let's talk about the real stuff and cut past the
and be
fluff.
Be willing to listen, like I think again, as we age, you're dealing with all kinds of introspective thoughts and maybe looking back on your life. And, I know for me, every birthday is like a very introspective sort of pensive day. And what I'm realizing is that the older I get, like you said, the more I do want to be known and understood and want to share some of my vulnerabilities, especially to people that are going to see me and love me. And if there's some rough edges, to help challenge me and smooth that out. But also to celebrate me, to actually understand the things that I'm saying and celebrate with context and understanding, and not just sort of the lazy, like, oh, cool, man, whatever, And so I think another way to answer this question of like, how do you be a good friend is, you put yourself in that same shoe and you listen. The practical application of that is kind of what you were saying. It's just asking more questions, talking less, and putting someone at the center of your intention. Even if you break it down to say, today my one goal is to make so-and-so feel amazing. This is a friend that I've had for years, or maybe this is a friend that I'm developing, a friendship that's a little bit newer, and locking in and saying, for the next 10 to 15 minutes, I'm going to make sure that this person understands how valued they are to me, how seen they are to me, couldn't imagine life without them, whatever the case is. And so I'm just going to either tell them that, or I'm going to ask a bunch of questions, and with unbroken focus, I'm going to listen and I'm going to be engaged in the things that they're saying, so that at the end of this, they feel like, wow, this was such a refreshing encounter. Thanks so much, And there you've just put another deposit into that friendship with no strings attached and no agenda other than just making them feel valued and loved. And I think look, we're talking about friendship, but that's applicable in marriage as well, because like we've said in a couple episodes past, the foundation of a healthy marriage is a friendship. And so that's why it's so important to be figuring these things out. And the only reason why we're, putting the parameter of friendship in your 30s is because that's where we are, and that's all we can really talk about.
I'm sure it changes and morphs when you get into your 40s and your 50s and your 60s and beyond. Like friendship's always evolving. And so this is what we're experiencing in our 30s, but it will be interesting to see how it continues to change, in the years to come. I also wanted to say that a way to be or extend friendship is to give, and I just put giving of your time, your abilities, your space. I think it's thinking about, wow, could this make someone's day? Like this small thing, going out of my way for just a few minutes to pick up a coffee for this person and bring it to them. Like how impactful that could be. Because really the way that I thought about this is like, what are the things people have done for me that have made me feel befriended, that have made me feel special? It's like going ahead and doing those things for others and remembering that. I think in your head, like for me at least, it's like I think of those things sometimes. I'm like, this is not that big of a deal. Like it's just a small thing. I won't do it. And it's like, no, like those tiny things, just like in marriage, it's the small things, right? That make such a significant impact. It's the same with friendships. I think it's those little things that we do. So carrying those out and walking them out. I also want to back up really quick and just mention, we talked about like sharing and listening. And I think too, as a friend, it's important to realize the time to listen and the time to share, because you also don't want to be that person that like spills on people. And so I think just deciphering like, what does this person need right now? And if you're like the needy friend, like evaluating like, okay, who do I need to go to? And how can I express like, hey, I really need like to be heard right now. And so just deciphering that and like navigating that can be tricky, but I think different friends play different roles in different seasons too. So just like a side note I wanted to mention, but
You got a friend in me. You got a friend.
I don't want to do
that. Okay. I don't want to do that.
Well, this has been a fun conversation. I feel like we could just go on and on about friendship.
There's friendship. Let's go.
There's so much in there, but hopefully there's a few things that are relatable to people throughout the conversation we had today.
Well, in that case, thank you, friends, for listening, all of you out there. And we hope that you enjoyed this episode. We hope that you will like, subscribe, do all the things. You know what it is. I'm not even going to remind you of it all.
If you'd like to leave a comment, we'd love to hear what kind of episodes you want to see in the future. So if there's a particular topic you'd like us to cover, we'd love to hear from you.
And join us next time for another episode of Quality Time with Gabe
and Grace.
Until next time, you've got a friend in me. Everybody now, you got a friend in me.
Okay.
Okay.
Weird.
Yeah.
All right.
That's it.
Till next time.